Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, June 2nd. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and we begin tonight with encouraging news on the COVID-19 front. It has not been very often that the news is so positive, but county health leaders are now saying things are looking up and the tiers are going down. Here's KPBS reporter John Carroll.
Supervisor Nathan Fletcher's opening remarks framing the progress made in the fight against COVID in San Diego County.
We did also surpass 55% of eligible San Diegans who are fully vaccinated, and so we are encouraged by the progress that we're making and what we were seeing, particularly as we approach almost 2 million San Diegans being fully vaccinated.
That being said, San Diego County is still in the orange tier, but our adjusted case rate for this week actually has us in the yellow tier.
We would need 2 consecutive weeks in the yellow tier to descend tiers.
We'll know when the weekly numbers come out next Tuesday if we'll move into the yellow tier. If the adjusted case rate numbers stay where they are or go even lower, we could move into the yellow tier a week from today. Moving into that tier will mean indoor and outdoor venues can all host more people. Capacity limits will increase across the board. Meantime, Fletcher says the vaccination effort is now moving away from the super sites, instead getting the vaccines to people where they are.
We're also making a strong push in the month of June on our mobile sites. We already have more than 100 mobile vaccine events that are planned.
Another bit of good news, because the county now has plenty of vaccine, the effort to vaccinate workers in American-owned factories just across the border is going well.
We started it on Monday, May 24th, and as of yesterday, we've been able to vaccinate over 6,447 workers.
Plus, Nora Vargas says the effort to vaccinate the county's Latinx population, especially in the South Bay, has gone very well. The next big step in our journey out of COVID will come on June 15th, when the state tiers system expires.
Next week, we'll probably share with you what life will look like from things we're doing from a public health standpoint post June 15th.
June 15th, a date that all of us will no doubt remember for the rest of our lives. The day when our collective nightmare that began in March of 2020 finally begins to recede into history. John Carroll, KPBS News.
As an added incentive, the county is teaming up with the Padres to give away 100 pairs of tickets. Anyone vaccinated between tomorrow and June 30th will be entered into the drawing. 2 vaccination events are also scheduled outside Petco Park on June 12th and the 26th. The first 1,000 people to get a shot on both days will get T-shirts. President Joe Biden says they're pulling out all the stops this month to get more Americans vaccinated by July 4th.
It's going to take everyone, the federal government, the state governments, local, tribal, and territorial governments, the private sector, and most importantly, the American people, to get to the 70% mark so we can declare our independence from COVID-19.
Incentives include everything from $1.5 million prizes offered by California to free beer by Anheuser-Busch. So far, nearly 51% of the total U.S. population has gotten at least 1 dose of a COVID vaccine. Nearly 41% is fully vaccinated. And if you haven't been vaccinated yet or need to help a family member to find a shot, we have all the information on our website. Click on the vaccines link on our homepage at kpbs.org and you can find a location that is close to you. Scripps Health provided a sobering update on the computer hack that has hobbled the hospital system for more than a month now. The personal information of as many as 150,000 individuals fell prey to the hackers. KPBS reporter Joe Hung explains how Scripps patients can better protect their information.
In their May 1st cyber attack, hackers likely got their hands on the social security numbers, driver's license numbers, and other personal information of Scripps Health patients. Mark Heckman is a cybersecurity expert and computer science professor at the University of San Diego. He says those impacted could be at huge risk of identity theft.
Blackmail is a possibility. If people have had some medical treatment that is sensitive, that they don't want the world generally to know, they could be potentially blackmailed.
Heckman said the severity of the impact will depend on how quickly patients act to protect their identities.
Call the credit agencies like Experian and the others, put a credit freeze, or at least ask to be notified when there's inquiries about your credit, so that you can stay on top of attempted identity theft.
While hospitals like Scripps often require patients to give up sensitive personal information, Heckman urges people not to give away personal details if they don't have to.
For example, you don't have to tell Facebook your actual birthday. Why tell them your exact birthday? So whenever possible, whenever it's not required, don't give up this personal information. And then you reduce the possibility of it being stolen from yet one more database.
Scripps health officials say the investigation into the cyber attack is ongoing. They added that Scripps will provide credit monitoring and identity protection services to patients whose social security numbers or driver's license numbers are at risk. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
And there's been yet another major cyber attack. Coming up, how it could affect your next trip to the grocery store. Solar supporters who rallied in Chula Vista today have won the battle to keep the legislature from upending the state's rooftop solar industry. The assembly fell 15 votes short of passing a major overhaul. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has the details.
The protesters hope to convince state assembly members to reject AB 1139. That proposal would add a flat grid connection charge to homes with solar panels and slash the rates that utilities have to pay for electricity generated. Karina Gonzalez is a Chula Vista resident who supports more opportunities for solar.
Utility attacks on solar aren't new. However, what is being proposed in Assembly Bill 1139 is the most aggressive attack on rooftop solar that we have seen to date.
The bill's author is San Diego Assembly member Lorena Gonzalez. She's come under fire for forwarding utility-backed suggestions to reform how solar customers are paid for the electricity they generate.
How we've decided to subsidize solar from the beginning was wrong. That is something the state of California did, 35 years ago, not knowing how successful it would be.
Gonzalez says rooftop solar owners are not paying to maintain the grid, and those costs are shifted to electricity customers without solar.
And we've got to re-examine it and say, hey, maybe we do want to subsidize rooftop solar, but where do we do that subsidy? Who pays for that subsidy? It can't be those who are least likely and able to get solar.
Gonzalez says solar is currently found in mostly white neighborhoods, and that means her black and brown constituents without solar are forced to subsidize residents who have it. That's not what Sonia Robinson sees. The community advocate says the proposal will keep solar as an option for only the rich.
Right now, we're looking at black and brown communities that have an opportunity with solar being so economical, available to them.
Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Youth sports were sidelined during the pandemic. As these organizations try to get back in action, they are finding many families simply cannot afford it. That's why Supervisor Jim Desmond is asking the county to allocate $10 million to pay for youth sports fees. It would come out of the $300 million that San Diego County received from the American Rescue Plan Act. Depending on the sport, registration fees can start at $100, plus additional costs for equipment, for uniforms, and maintenance of the fields.
My grandma says either I can play or my brother can play, and I don't want to play if my brother can't play. And so immediately I told him, don't worry about it, we'll figure out a way for you to play.
Details about how the money would be divided within the youth sports groups are still being worked out, but first they'll have to secure the funding. The County Board of Supervisors will vote on how the federal COVID relief money will be spent next Tuesday. The city of San Diego is updating its parks master plan for the first time in 65 years. KPBS reporter Melissa May explains the new Parks for All of Us initiative.
The new initiative is based on years of public feedback, and Mayor Todd Gloria says it delivers a firm commitment to equity. The goal is to provide a more equitable, accessible, and high-quality park system for all by giving parks to neighborhoods that don't have any, upgrades to ones that need upgrading, and expanding and improving existing parks.
The current plan no longer meets the needs of a 21st century city, and what we're proposing is a new plan that envisions the creation of 100 new acres of park space over the next 10 years, coupled with a dramatic increase in equitable financing in neighborhoods.
The old park standard was based on acreage. For every 1,000 residents, 2.8 acres was allotted to community and neighborhood parks. The new parks master plan transitions to a recreational value-based standard, which promotes physical activity and creating a safe, active space for the community. Gloria's initiative calls on the City Council to establish a citywide impact fee paid by housing developers that will allow the city to fund park projects.
This particular park was a hard-fought victory for this community. Obviously, this is a dense neighborhood with a lot of housing, and so this is a very important part of the neighborhood quality of life here.
That park is the Whiteman Street Neighborhood Park in City Heights. City Heights resident Josephine Ariano and her family enjoy the park on a daily basis.
It means everything to my kids. They love coming to the park every day. They're here constantly. They enjoy running, playing, riding their bike.
Ariano says the park provides a safe space for this community.
We do need the help to get the park cleaned up for our kids.
Currently, the city owns and maintains more than 42,000 acres of park assets across 54 communities. The plan is expected to go before the City Council this summer. Melissa May, KPBS News.
The heat is on in the deserts of San Diego County. An excessive heat warning has been issued through Friday night with dangerously high temperatures that are expected. Jessica Pash has the details in your forecast.
Get ready for some serious heat here over the next couple of days. We do have some excessive heat warnings in effect for some of the deserts, and on top of that, we're going to be near record warm for some of you. Not near the coast, though. We're going to be talking about morning fog and cloud cover near the coastal regions as we do have that onshore flow. And so that means you're not going to be quite as warm as the rest of the region. But take a look at this. Again, further inland in some of the interior sections, that's where those excessive heat warnings are in effect. So Borrego Springs, you're one of those spots that is under an excessive heat warning until Thursday evening. So keep that in mind. Definitely try to limit any kind of outdoor activity you're going to be doing in that region. For tonight, temperatures dropping down into the mid-60s only in the metro with increasing cloud cover out there. As again I mentioned, we're going to be dealing with that fog here. So temperatures dropping off to 61 in Oceanside for tonight. Ramona getting down to 56. Borrego Springs not even dropping out of the 70s for those overnight lows. And taking you through time during the overnight period, you'll notice all this cloud cover that's offshore is slowly going to move further inland as the winds push it onshore and push in a little bit of that moisture. But those clouds will clear in the afternoon and we'll see more in the way of sunshine. So Thursday's not quite as hot here for most of central northern California up into Nevada, but that sizzling heat moves further south down into, again, some of the desert regions that are going to be just so hot for this time of year. We're talking triple-digit heat there for some of you. Temperatures tomorrow afternoon getting back up into the mid to upper 80s further inland. And then Friday, the large heat dome only continues here. So near the coast, not a whole lot of change. Temperatures generally in the upper 60s to low 70s. Further inland, you'll notice we're in the mid 80s over the next couple of days and then dropping off as we head into next week. In the mountains, temperatures get up into the upper 70s tomorrow. After that, we fall into the upper 60s by the weekend. And in the desert, the heat is on with temperatures falling off by the second half of the weekend. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
And that excessive heat warning will raise the risk for heat-related illnesses as well. County officials are reminding everyone to drink plenty of fluids when spending time outdoors. If you don't have air conditioning, several county facilities will be open as cool zones, and you can find out more at coolzones.org. California health regulators have long been faulted for doing too little to ensure that the state's 88,000 elderly and disabled people in nursing homes receive proper care. Now, as KPBS's Amita Sharma reports, an idea is being floated that critics say would gut nursing home oversight.
I'm still dealing with the effect from what happened at this place.
Rob Halliburton landed at Palomar Vista Nursing Home in Escondido last spring, needing care for a foot wound. The 57-year-old says it turned out to be the worst place for him.
I almost got my foot amputated because they wasn't taking care of my wound and my treatment.
And Halliburton says his experience was just one example of poor treatment at the facility.
I witnessed everything from the wound care to not being changed to being treated unfairly, being not listened to. I witnessed so many things that would make you cry. Literally make you cry.
Felicia Barbado is a nursing home inspector for the California Department of Public Health. Barbado told state legislators last year that stories of inadequate care are commonplace.
I have been well aware of the poor infection control practices and quality of care in many of our nursing homes prior to the pandemic. The high rates of death in these facilities during the pandemic unfortunately comes as no surprise.
Despite all of this, CDPH is now mulling a post-pandemic remodel of its oversight system being pushed by the nursing home industry. The agency's draft plan would require inspectors to visit nursing homes a few times each month to advise staff on how to reverse substandard care. Carl Steinberg, medical director of Life Care Center of Vista and Carlsbad by the Sea Care Center, says the idea would be a dramatic improvement over the current inspection system.
It's very much, gotcha. I found, the temperature of the breakfast was 2 degrees below what it should have been, or those kinds of things.
Steinberg says his support of the new approach has nothing to do with his other role as chief medical officer of Mariner Healthcare. The group is being sued by the state for understaffing its Northern California nursing homes, falsifying its ratings to boost profits, and failing to report any of the numerous sexual assaults at its facilities. Steinberg says his advocacy for revamping the state inspection system began long before the lawsuit.
I do think a little bit more sort of humanity and collaboration would potentially go a long way.
CDPH declined an interview, but in an email said the principle was to establish a more frequent presence in nursing homes. The email goes on to say that if the new method is implemented, CDPH will still carry out its, quote, distinct regulatory enforcement role. Advocates for nursing home residents call this an impossible promise.
What are they giving up? And I think the obvious answer is they'd be giving up enforcement. They'd be giving up complaint investigation.
Tony Chicatel is a staff lawyer for California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform. He says it already takes CDPH an average of 636 days to investigate complaints against the facilities statewide. Chicatel contends that having the agency's inspectors take on consulting roles would also pose a giant conflict of interest.
Equivalent of adopt a sniff would be if you got pulled over by a police officer for speeding and the police officer jumped in the car with you and said, okay, let's drive around and you show me your skills and I'll critique you.
Advocates say inspectors have told them they are against the idea. A lawyer for the CDPH Inspectors Union did not return phone calls. Meanwhile, Rob Halliburton says his foot still hasn't recovered. A CDPH investigation into his claims concluded Palomar Vista failed to provide him with proper wound care. It's why he's opposed to a change that would reduce CDPH's watchdog role.
I think that would be the worst thing ever, period. Because we need them to be our police. That's what they should be, our police. Almost like when you call 911, the police show up and take care of you.
Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
In a statement, Palomar Vista said it couldn't discuss Halliburton's claims, but added it earnestly disagrees with the suggestion that anyone at the facility was ignored or mistreated, and said its staff is well trained in wound care.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, a new Israeli government of unlikely partners moves to oust longtime Prime Minister Netanyahu. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Yet another cyber attack on a major U.S. company. This time, hackers shut down 9 beef processing plants. And as Isabel Rosales reports, it could mean that you'll have a harder time finding the meat at the grocery store.
Microsoft and the Pentagon, among others, left vulnerable to hackers in a breach. Panic at the pump after the shutdown of Colonial Pipeline. Now, beef could be harder to find and more expensive at your grocer.
We're going to see more of this before we see less of it.
A string of cyber attacks is to blame.
They've just gotten bigger and bolder.
Cybersecurity expert Jason Crabtree says hackers are using the same playbook, but Americans are paying more attention.
It's an incredibly personal and disruptive thing to say, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get gas to go to work. I don't know if I'm going to be able to bring back some of the food that I need for my family.
The latest ransomware attack forced meat producer JBS to close processing plants in these states.
A lot of organizations are realizing that they didn't think that they were a target or that they had a really good report card, but they might have looked like a real dumpster fire from the internet and they get targeted.
President Joe Biden signed an executive order last month to strengthen cybersecurity and to share information between government agencies.
Sunlight is going to be the best disinfectant.
But the order is mostly focused on the federal government. Crabtree says companies need to better monitor their data, protect it, and be more transparent when attacks do happen.
This is solvable, but a lot of organizations have made a choice not to bring in the experts or the technology or the process maturity that they need to do so.
In Washington, Isabel Rosales, KPBS News.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is asking states to use some new government funding to help working parents. States are slated to receive $350 billion from the American Rescue Plan. The business lobbying group pointed to disruption in childcare as one of the issues causing a worker shortage. There are currently a record 8.1 million job openings. The chamber is also pushing for investment in workforce training programs, second chance hiring for those with a criminal record, and immigration law reforms. As we come out of pandemic isolation and COVID guidelines continue to be updated, kids may need help adjusting to the changes and new expectations that are around them. Mandy Gaither got expert advice to help ease the stress and the anxiety that may come with getting back to normal.
For more than a year, we've had masks, social distancing, and for some, virtual learning in our lives. Now, with vaccinations and lower COVID case counts, things are inching back to the way they were. But that's not always easy either.
You might have some kids who are really excited about getting back to normal at first, and then others who are a little more hesitant.
But there are some things you can do to help your children adjust to changing COVID-19 guidelines. First, simply talk to them, says Jody Baumstein, a licensed therapist at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta's Strong for Life program.
Because if the expectation has been one thing for a year or more, and suddenly it changes, we can't just expect kids to just adapt and not understand why.
Baumstein says to start the conversation by asking what they know.
Figuring out, is what they heard even accurate and true? And if not, gently, you want to correct that misinformation.
She says to use simple, straightforward language to let them know exactly what to expect.
If a policy or practice has changed at school or a camp or somewhere in the community that they're used to going over the past year, help them understand what it's going to be like when they go next time.
Finally, Baumstein says to keep a safe, open environment so they can continue the dialogue with you.
Just let them know that they can come back to you whenever they want or they need. And if you don't have the information, you'll find out and you'll get back to them.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
A California teen took on a mama bear in her backyard when her dogs got in way over their heads. It was all caught on video as Christine Lazar spoke with the family about their close encounter.
A mama bear walking on a backyard wall with her 2 cubs. When the homeowners, 3 dogs, rush toward her, the bear, trying to protect her babies, picks up one of the dogs by its vest. Then watch as Haley Marinico lunges at the bear and pushes her off the ledge. Now, watch the video again, knowing that Haley is just 17 years old.
In that moment, I don't have much time to think.
I run over to the bear, and the first thing I think to do is to push the bear off the ledge it's standing on, and it will hopefully release my dog. And somehow, thank God, it works.
Haley then picks up her dogs and runs inside.
What was going through your mind when you were face to face with this bear?
Honestly, the only thing I had in mind was to protect my dogs, and that's what I did.
Haley's frantic parents can be heard shouting at her in the background.
It's horrifying to see your daughter approach a huge bear, and just thinking that the bear could have swiped at her face and we would be having another kind of news today.
Wildlife experts say the bear was simply trying to protect her cubs. California only has American black bears.
And they are not inherently aggressive towards humans or our pets. She was reacting to the perceived threat of the dogs. And if this animal was inherently aggressive, those dogs probably would have gotten attacked instead of just swiped at.
Do not push bears. Do not get close to bears. You do not want to get unlucky. I just happened to come out unscathed.
Absolutely amazing. That was Christine Lazar reporting. Experts say if you do come face to face with a bear, do not touch it or push it. Instead, make a lot of noise to scare it away. A big honor for Padres superstar Fernando Tatis Jr. He won the National League's Player of the Month award for May. Despite missing several games due to COVID-19 protocols, the 22-year-old hit 9 home runs, drove in 26 and batted .353. He also stole 8 bases, by the way. Tatis also became the fastest shortstop in Major League Baseball history to reach 50 career home runs. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. I hope you have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.